TVCOGECO, truly local television.
Call this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. I see we have a full house tonight. I'm sure every single one of you are going to stay here for the whole meeting, aren't you? No? No, I tried. Anyways, welcome. We will be following two agendas this evening. The first agenda will be the Committee of the Whole, whereby we'll receive many reports that staff is presenting to Council. And from there, we will then move on to our Council meeting, which we would hope and expect ratification of the reports that we discussed during Committee of the Whole. So we are going to start off with a prayer by Councillor Bill Steele, and that will be followed by the National Anthem, led by Mr. Joe Longfellow. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a prayer for our students. Father, this summer will be full of new experiences for me and my friends. New jobs, exciting trips, and vacations to places we've never been before. Grow us, stretch us through whatever we do and through wherever we go, so that we'll end the summer just a little more like you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Joel, as always, well done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Avec mon plaisir.
En français la prochaine fois.
Now that was different. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
Thank you. Members of Council, I need a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Doucette, seconder. Councillor Kenny, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? With none, we'll move on to determination of council items listed before you to have separate discussion on. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll bring forward item number 1.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to speak to item 1 as well, and then 2, 4, and 9.
Further items. With that, I'll accept the motion to bring the following items that weren't lifted forward. Councillor Demeray, Councillor Steele, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. We'll now move on to presentations. I have 2 presentations we're going to make. The first being to Ms. Valerie Catton on her retirement from the City of Port Colborne. Didn't I just present you with a 25-year watch? Yeah. What's that? I'm going to take that back. And we're also going to be presenting some hydro grants that the board has so graciously and generously given to the many organizations throughout the City of Port Colborne. So I will be asking the hydro members to join me at the podium. So with that, we'll start off with Ms. Valerie Catton, and I'll do that at the podium. Come on up. Come on up. Come on up. Come on up. It'd be easier for me to talk to you when you're beside me.
Share space.
Yes, we can. It's and I say this every time. I preface my comments by stating it's sort of a bittersweet evening this week, this Monday evening, when we have to say goodbye to one of our family members here in the chamber. It's always, again, bittersweet because it's tough to lose a part of our team, but also, I'm sure, in this case, Valerie is going to be moving on to better things called retirement. And I envy you, I tell you. I wish I could join you. But Valerie Catton, our librarian, is in fact retiring. And Val has actually spent many, many years here in the city of Port Colborne. And as I said, I just presented her with a 25-year watch. And well, I think it was a couple of months ago, wasn't it? Back in the early part of the year. And then I find out that she's actually going to be celebrating her 6th anniversary with the city. And she was hired on February 29th. And that's why I say she's celebrating her 6th anniversary with the city. So with that, and I can relate to that because my daughter's a leap year girl. So that's what I constantly say to my daughter when it's her birthday. So it's kind of comical. Happy 6th year anniversary.
Thank you. I'm younger now.
But the Port Colborne Library was one of the first libraries, public libraries, in Ontario, in the province of Ontario, to be computerized, and Val was hired to help automate our local library. She and the automation team took the information from over 100,000, that's 100,000, books and entered it into the computer to change the card catalog into a computer database. That was before the internet actually came to the library. Today, the catalog is available online 24/7 anywhere in the world. In 1996, Val was promoted to the post of librarian. The librarian builds the library collection based on the unique needs of the interests of the people in our community. She serves as well, knowing full well what the community needs. She did it very successfully, and we all know Val knows Port Colborne. With that said, some highlights of her hard work can be found in the areas of large print books and audio books on CD, arts and crafts, self-improvement and do-it-yourself, Westerns, and World War I and II. Val is responsible for all programming at the library, from tots to teens to seniors. She has recruited from the ranks of Port Colborne residents, our businesses, as well as both schools. When I say both, I mean elementary and secondary. She's done this to run classes and seminars, to sponsor children's reading clubs, to build an army of volunteers, to donate the lumber for a children's birdhouse craft, to form strong and lasting partnerships within here, the city of Port Colborne. She is up to date on the latest trends in health, arts and entertainment, politics, sports, cooking, and diet, and I'm very sure that you can probably see her on the next ballot sitting around this horseshoe. No?
Maybe.
Maybe. But I'm told her special areas of expertise are Area 51 and the aliens, which we know fly around Port Colborne every once in a while, inventor Nikola Tesla, quilting and knitting, Al Jolson and vaudeville, as well as gardening and woodworking, conspiracy theories. You would be a warm welcome addition at the Region.
Good, good.
We need you at the Region.
I'll be there.
Astrology, and finally raising chickens. I understand that in Val's retirement, she will be looking forward to volunteering in the community, quilting, spending time with her grandchildren, and raising chickens. Which ward do you live in?
Oh, I'm good to.
So Val, it's a pleasure. It's actually a privilege to speak on behalf of council, but more importantly on behalf of the community. When I say thank you for all the years you've given to our community, all the folks that frequent our library on a regular basis. And with that, it's my pleasure on behalf of all of them to present to you a plaque. I don't like doing this because it seems like we should be giving her so much more. But as I say every time, council will not let me send you to Hawaii.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay, I would love to, but I can't. But this is the very least we can do, Val, with respect to our appreciation, something you can hang on your wall and remember all of us, and of course all those people that you served, presented to yourself in recognition of 25 years of I can read this without my glasses.
Good.
Of dedicated and outstanding service to the city of Port Colborne. On behalf of members of City Council, as well as all the residents of the city of Port Colborne, we want you to know that the contributions, your efforts, have provided to our community will in fact be everlasting. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, we also have something else for you. I'm not sure if you can guess what it is, but here it is, and you have to open it here.
Okay.
You have to open it here.
Thank you.
But it's something that's become tradition for our retirees. Just rip it.
I don't know. I think I need to get that off first. Here we are. Now what? Here we are. They wrap it too well. They should have had it.
You kind of weld it together, right?
Exactly. That's lovely. Got it?
Just get the bottom there and get some tape there.
I know, I don't know what they're using. Special tape.
Tape on there.
There we are. Okay.
There you go.
Thank you very much. That is lovely.
And here's a plaque for you as well. I don't like putting it on because I'm not sure if you want it on the front or the back.
Ah,
So
okay.
I always leave it on.
Absolutely.
But,
Oh, that's great.
Now, before I let you go, we have another presentation that Ms. Cheryl McMillan, on behalf of the Library Board, wants to come up and say her 10, 15-minute speech. And I told you I'd get you, Cheryl. But Cheryl,
Oh, you opened it first. Thank you. She knew I was going to have trouble.
From the Port Colborne Library Board, we knew that Val wanted a mantel clock, and here it is.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes, right. I'll put my hand on that. Well, thank you so much for everything. I have a lot of bosses in this community. I have a library board, I have a boss, and I have the city. And honestly, I have enjoyed every day of my working life here in Port Colborne. I think it's a wonderful community. I can't say enough about it to people. You know, as visitors to come in, they're so surprised. I love it when I'm at the library and people come into the library and they go, oh, look at this. And they do, honestly, because compared to maybe the community that they came from, our library is second to none. It really is. And not because I've been there, but because of the atmosphere, and everybody's been so welcoming to the city. And we're so wonderfully connected, all of our services. You know, I think the city does a wonderful job, you know, in every aspect. So, and I've enjoyed it so much.
good.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie.
Okay. Shall I just take this away?
Yeah. Actually, I'll help you out here. I wouldn't put that on top of
No,
that.
I don't want to.
I'll help you out here.
Okay, thank you. Can you do that? Oh, thank you.
And Luke wants to get a picture here, so we'll just step
Oh,
outside the
Luke, don't
podium here.
Hey, look, this is goodbye.
Jen, why don't you come on, Jen, come on in here with us. There we go. When Valerie mentions the people that come into Port Colborne and look at our library and are really just impressed with it, Valerie, you can credit yourself with that, because you've been working there for quite some time and have enabled us to have that kind of facility, library, home for so many that want to come and take part in the literacy that we promote so much of. But all of you, I see members of the board here, I see other employees and other folks. To all of you, along with Val, I really want to express my sincere appreciation on behalf of council and the entire community. Job well done. Now, as is tradition every year, twice a year actually, we give out the 2013 permissive grants to many different organizations throughout the community that work so hard to deliver different programs, ensuring that, once again, the city of Port Colborne is, Vicki, let me hear it. Vicki, let me hear it. Where everybody belongs. I told you guys I'm going to use that constantly. That's a tagline for community living here in Port Colborne, and I use it quite often. You got to catch on to that, Vicki. But once again, all these different organizations, I'll preface my comments by stating you do, in fact, ensure that the city of Port Colborne is where everyone belongs, and I have to congratulate each and every one of you for that. So before I start, I'm going to call up members of the Hydro Board. I see back there we have Gary Bruno. Gary, if you want to come on up. Len Hunt. I see Len back there. Len's our chairman. Len, come on up. B. Kenny, Councillor Kenny, and Councillor Bill Steele, if you folks want to come up. And I am now going to turn the floor over to our illustrious chairman, Mr. Len Hunt. Len, welcome. Great to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah, I've already separated them for everybody.
Okay. I'd like to thank the groups for coming out tonight. Your volunteer work through the years really appreciated here in the city. And Hydro's only regret is we don't have more funds to hand out. So we'll start off. I'll call on Vice Chair B. Kenny to start off.
Thanks. It's always a pleasure to give out money. And it's groups like the ones now that I have the pleasure of handing out that I'm very pleased. First of all, the 79 Linton Davy Squadron, the Royal Canadian Air Cadets. Yeah. The Air Cadet Squadron will be using these funds for their new flight simulator that they'll be setting up in one of their classrooms. The warrant officer is Alexander Fazzari and the co-chair is Sebastian Fazzari. And the amount that the Hydro Board is giving out to these cadets is $2,000.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of Air Cadets, I would like to thank the City of Port Colborne and Hydro. This money is going to be used to train future Air Cadets to become pilots, so thank you very much.
And the second group is Community Living Port Colborne Wainfleet, and Pat Davis, the chairman, is coming up. This funding that we're giving is to assist their Monday and Wednesday Kids Zone, an after-school program offered to families at the Center for Community Living. The program provides activities for children who might not otherwise be able to afford the cost of registration and transportation to other community programs, and the amount is $1,125.
We do wish to thank the Hydro Foundation for this donation, and B is absolutely correct. That's exactly what we use the money for, and she took my little speech. But I am very seldom ever at a loss for words, so we do want to say that this is one of the programs that gets no funding from anyone else, so certainly not from the ministry. So in order to run this program, we are very much dependent on the money from the Hydro Foundation so that we can continue to run it, and we thank you very, very much for that. And Len, we're sorry that you couldn't make our annual general meeting, but we're going to present you with a certificate because the Hydro Foundation has been extremely generous to community living in the past several years, and we want to recognize your partnership with community living.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, it's my pleasure to next recognize the Navy League. Not sure if anyone's here for that, Lake Erie Shore Branch. The amount is $1,625. And these funds will help equip the Navy League Cadet Unit with needed uniform parts for cadets and officers, as well as administrative items, recruiting, and promotional items for both Royal Canadian Sea Cadet Corps and Navy League Cadet Corps, $1,625. Congratulations. Say a few words, someone?
I would like to thank the council and Hydro Gang because we are a non-profit organization and we have to buy all our uniforms. So like whatever money we can get, we appreciate. Thanks.
Great job, guys.
Thank you. Next is Niagara Antique Power Association, Barbara Middlestead. Sure, Barbara's here. Yes, okay. These funds will be used to assist with the placement of doors on their pavilion where visitors sit and eat out of the sun. The placement of doors is intended to improve sanitary conditions and protect items being stored during the winter months. Barbara?
Well done. We'd like to thank Port Colborne Hydro, the council, Mayor Badaway, for their continued support. Without your continued support,
we wouldn't be able to have a 3-day show over Canada Day weekend to let people learn about our heritage, whether it was agricultural or domestic. We do both, and we do it well. So please come out this weekend and join us.
Great.
Thank you. Just before I start, I just want to make one mention of the Air Cadets. Just got to say that my father, when he came back as a fighter pilot from World War II, helped start our Air Cadets, and it's been a great organization ever since. So thank you, guys. My two groups are the First Evangelical Lutheran Church, Margaret Young. The funds will be used to assist towards the final phase of the hall renovation project, which is the kitchen renovation portion. This renovation will upgrade their current kitchen facilities to allow them to better serve the community who uses their hall for programs and activities. And it's in the amount of $600. Mark, thank you.
On behalf of First Lutheran Church, we'd like to thank the Hydro Commission and Council for this donation. We're going to put it to good use, and just so everybody knows, we've been around for more than 150 years in this community, and we will continue to serve. Thank you very much.
Next is Le Centre Polyvalent et Francophone de Port Colborne, or better known as the French Golden Age Club, Linda Johnson and Claire Bellinger. The funds will be used to assist with launching a new yoga program called Gentle Balanced Yoga. The program will be tailored mostly towards senior yoga students, and the amount is $1,200. Thank you. Thank you.
We'd like to thank the Hydro and the Port Colborne Council for this generous donation for us. That'll be great.
As a general manager, I'd like to say I'm really happy to see the support that the French community is receiving from the city of Port Colborne. It's always nice to have that, you know, that support for the French community.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I have the pleasure of calling on the South Niagara Rowing Club. The funding will assist with purchasing 3 used rowing shells for the club. These new shells will be greatly boost their health, the core group of rowing shells that are available to athletes, and allow for additional membership. And the amount is $1,275.
I'm Helen Taylor, president of South Niagara Rowing Club. This is Swede Burak. He's our head coach, former Olympian, that we were fortunate to steal away from a close-by rowing club this year. And the boats and the situation as our club continues to grow is always an equipment need is something that is there. These boats that we're getting from this check will be lasting us probably for about the next 8 years. So we'll be back asking for more. But we do really appreciate it. It benefits a lot of the kids that are in grades 7 and 8 going into the high schools, but Port Colborne and Lakeshore both have rowing clubs. And Nicole Jean Vanier has a good rowing team as well, and they draw their students from Port Colborne as well. So thank you very much.
And representing the YMCA, Ashley Johnson, the funding will assist the YMCA Young Action Program costs of staff, program supplies, equipment, staff training, and promotion of the program. And the amount of the grant is $3,400.
Thank you very much to the Hydro Foundation as well as the City of Port Colborne. Wholeheartedly, thank you very much. The program, which is free to participants, couldn't be sustainable without your generous donation. And it's offered in evenings at Steele Street School. It's youth action, so it offers youth a place to be social and physically active in the evening. So thank you very much.
No, I don't want yours. Those are a bit too strong. I do have the last two contributions that we'll be giving out this evening, the first being that of the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 56. We are going to be giving the Legion $1,000. Anybody here from the Legion? Oh, we can put this bet in the bank. Just kidding. We'll mail it. This is going to assist with the cost of a new floor at their building at 67 Clarence Street, and it will enable them to continue to serve their veterans and their dependents and to promote remembrance, the different activities that we do host here in Port Colborne with respect to remembrance, both not only at the Cenotaph once a year, but Memorial Day a second time a year, and we would expect and also hope that their actions enable us always to remember. And that's a great part of the Legion being here in the city of Port Colborne. Lastly, we have our fourth installment toward a $22,000 commitment to the 2012 capital campaign for Port Cares. And I see Linda Reinhardt is running up here to get this check. And the first of many, right, Linda?
That's right.
But congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
I'd like to accept this check on behalf of Port Cares and to thank the Hydro Board, the City of Port Colborne, for supporting the building of the Reach Out Food Center and for the many people that use the food security initiatives there on a daily basis. Thank you very much.
Before I give Lynn the microphone back, I'm sure he has his 15-minute speech he wants to give. I do. This keeps going up and up and up. But no, I do want to say, because you folks that are watching on COGECO and some that are watching from the gallery may wonder where this money is actually coming from. Many of you know that we did years ago enter into an agreement with Canadian Niagara Power, your hydro company here in the city of Port Colborne, as well as to our east, our neighbors in the town of Fort Erie. We struck a deal with them to lease our asset, our hydro asset, which contributed to the city approximately $1.5 million a year, which in fact we did some projects but put most of it in the reserve, and of course the majority of that paid for the Valley Center. But with that, we thought it appropriate to shift over our permissive grants from the taxpayer over to what we were receiving as part of that dividend. In 2012, that came to an end, and we were then purchased by Canadian Niagara Power. And that basically consummated the deal and brought in the full amount of $15.6 million into the city, which we were able to leverage over well, close to $50 million based on having that original one-third contribution. We're able to tap into many other programs because we had that one-third contribution, turning that $15.6 million into over $50 million, and then therefore having the ability to accelerate many capital projects, which I'm sure you can all see when you drive around the city of Port Colborne within the last 2 years. And it also enabled us to go debt-free, as well as very little, if no, impact to the property taxpayers while we were completing all those different capital projects that I'm sure you're taking full advantage of right now in our community. Having said that, we still wanted to continue the contribution to the different groups and continue the permissive grants. I'll use this phrase, while we entered the new age of hydro deregulation back in the late 90s, and we entered into the agreement with Canadian Niagara Power, we still wanted to find other revenue opportunities to then therefore eliminate the need to constantly go back to the taxpayer and create a mechanism, another additional mechanism to replace the dividend here in the city of Port Colborne, whereby we can continue to invest in our community, in particular the permissive grants that we give different groups. How do we do that? We formed another company called Port Colborne Fiber, and with Port Colborne Fiber, we were able to invest in a regional company called Niagara Region Broadband. This broadband company now, with our other three partners, that being the town of Grimsby, the town of Niagara Lake, and the city of Niagara Falls. Am I missing one? You got it. That's it. And ourselves, the four of us, became shareholders in this new company. And with that said, we are now able to collect dividends ranging from $100,000 to $500,000 a year, depending on our capital outlay, as well as other debt that the company had to acquire when they were getting off the ground. So with that, we now have in perpetuity, well, as long as we are a part of that group, that company, the ability to continue these permissive grants, and hopefully many of you that received those grants this evening will be successful on to the future as you do your work here in the city of Port Colborne. Finally, I want to say this, as I always do when we give out these checks, thank you. Thank you to all of you. You may be thanking us today for the checks that we're giving you, but that's the least we can do. You folks, all of you, are really making a difference in our community. The many volunteers that you have in our community, the work that they do, we just simply wouldn't do as a community of 18,000. We would not be able to accomplish what we do accomplish without each and every one of you. So with that, I say to all of you, your volunteers, your boards of directors, etc., with respect to your participation and contribution, most importantly into the city of Port Colborne, thank you. It's a job well done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to thank Council for allowing this to proceed the way it is. And the Niagara Regional Broadband, of course, did not pay a dividend this particular year because of refresh of almost $1 million in that company. Both Mr. Bruno, who just left, is a past chair of that board, and I'm personally on that board of directors. And we hope to see more funds coming this way to Council. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll get that.
Okay.
Just a message to Len. Len, as our representative on our NRBN, although we never got that dividend this year, next year, does that mean it's going to be twice as much? Yes? We're going to hold you to that one. We had NRBN had a real intense capital refresh this year after 10 years of being in the business. So unfortunately, we didn't see a dividend, but hopefully we'll make up for that next year. Members of Council, we now have a delegation. We have Mr. Richard Moore, the Chair of the Port Colborne Seniors Advisory Council, and Richard's here to discuss with us the Senior Advisory Council's annual report. It is listed in your agenda, item 7, so if you want to pull it up and follow along while Mr. Moore is going to be giving us his update. Mr. Moore, welcome as always.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to report to the City Council. I want to acknowledge members of the Seniors Advisory Committee who are here with us, Maggie Walhorn and Vale King, and 2 members of Council, Angie Desmarais and Yvonne Doucette, hardworking members of the Council. It's been a busy and productive year since September of 2012 until May of 2013, and we have a number of achievements to report to you. We've developed a strategic plan that was very focused on what we wanted to accomplish. We have revised our terms of reference to include our responsibility of communicating with seniors in the senior citizens in the community as well as with City Council. Another major accomplishment is the designation of Port Colborne by the World Health Organization as an age-friendly city. This is an important designation, and it's going to affect City Council a lot, because every law that you pass, every plan that you make has to be looked at from the point of view of age friendliness and how it's going to affect not only the older members of the community, but young families as well. The age-friendly initiative, there's material about it, has been down there at the front desk in the lobby of City Hall. It's an excellent initiative, and a group in regional Niagara received a large grant from the Trillium Foundation, and it was through their work, particularly a woman named Virginia Stewart, with whom we worked closely, that we were able to achieve this designation for the city of Port Colborne. We also have made revisions to our very popular brochure that we had to reprint and have had to reprint again for every Monday. We're holding celebrations on Monday in the farmers market, and we have to get it reprinted each week because there's such a popular item. We also presented a 4-session educational series for older citizens in Port Colborne, and we did that in close cooperation with Port Cares, which was a great help, and the Bridges Community Health Center. We had the cooperation of our 2 senior centers, Friends Over 55 and Les Centres des Jeunes Francophones as well. They hosted 2 of our sessions. We are celebrating Seniors Month, as I mentioned earlier, at the Farmers Market on Mondays. Some of us are singing as buskers, and some of us are at tables providing information to seniors and handing out our brochures and collecting information about people's needs and wishes. We've brought some resolutions to City Council, which you have passed, for which we are grateful, and they have stirred the waters, particularly one with respect to home care services. Home care services is a major and growing trend. Our current health care system was planned for a younger population, and as the population of Canada ages, home care services become more and more important. Currently, a lot of the home care dollars that are allocated by the Ministry of Health go to hospitals that are sending sicker people home sooner. And the dollars that were promised for frail seniors in the community, with a couple hours of support each week, they could remain in the community, continue making contributions. That money gets eaten up by these very sick people who deserve the home care services. We have been working with a group called Care Watch, and they have many years of experience in this area of home care, and we're looking at various models to fund home care services for frail seniors. The various ideas, one of them was that a percentage of the health care budget go to home care. Other ones are to start a new program that employees and employers would contribute to, much like the Canada Pension Plan. But we need a new funding model for home care services, and we will be coming to you with ideas and suggestions for which we will probably want some motions on your part. Our major theme this year had to do with working in partnerships. And as I mentioned, for our seminar series, we worked with Port Cares, with the 2 centers, and with 2 senior centers, and with Bridges Community Health Center. And they provided invaluable support to our committee. None of our achievements would have been possible without the cooperation and support of our partners, our competent and supportive staff, Harry Hakim and his assistant, Michelle Cuthbert-Idzinga, and most especially our members. We're also indebted to City Council for the budget that you passed that enables us to do our work. So thank you for the opportunity of reporting to you the work that this young committee of the city has been doing. Any questions?
Thank you, Richard. Members of council, any questions or comments? Just one comment, Richard, to you and the crew and the gang and the team, including the councilors. Job well done. I recall when I had brought this recommendation to council, the former seniors committee, I never envisioned it would be this robust in terms of what you're sinking your teeth into and the different issues you're getting involved in. It makes a difference. It really adds to that balance in the community with respect to all demographic that we have here in the city of Port Colborne. So to all of you and your team, great job. Well done.
Your supporting our motions that have come to you have been extremely important and have caused questions in the House in Toronto and brought the issues forward. So we thank you as well.
Thank you. Have a nice evening. Members of council, we're now going to move on to a short report that I have this evening, just promoting 2 different initiatives. First, starting July 8th, Melissa's Playground, located over at H.H. No Park. And as I'm speaking, Richard, if you can tune that camera into this drawing over here, if you don't mind. Starting July 8th, Melissa's Playground, which is located at H.H. No Park, will be receiving a renewal with the old playground equipment being removed and a new accessible structure being installed by Power Play Canada. This is a group that also installed structures at the Humberston Shoe Park as well as Westdale Park back in 2011. Melissa's Playground was built in 1998, and this type of equipment typically lasts about 15 years, so it is right on target to be replaced. There is a picture, as I said, that Richard's zooming in on, of the new playground, and you will note that many new accessible features are included. I want to say this, and the reason why I bring it up today, because the playground area will be fenced off for construction for approximately 2 weeks, Chris. And this will allow for the demolition of the existing structures and the building of the new equipment. The splash pad, pavilion, and the rest of the park will be still available to families during these this 2-week period. However, as I said, the playground area will in fact be fenced off for that construction to be undertaken. Through the media, we hope, Luke, if you can help us out, we hope to get this information out to everyone so that they can look forward to a brand new playground by the end of July, but most importantly, to let the residents know that the playground will be shut down for that period of time, and simply put, bear with us so we can get the new equipment up and running, and the kids can be back at it in no time. The second issue I wanted to bring up this evening is, as many members of the community recognize, we have been designated by the World Fishing Network as the ultimate fishing town here in Canada. And with that, it's going to be our privilege this Friday morning to welcome Marika Azumi, who will be down here with her team, to make the presentation of both, obviously, the designation to the City of Port Colborne, but equally, if not most important to some of us and some others, the check in the amount of $25,000 that'll be going towards different fishing activities here in the City of Port Colborne, led by the Port Colborne Conservation Club. So for all those folks that are watching on this Tuesday evening, there's no game tonight, so I'm sure you're watching COGECO 10. But with that said, come on out and see Marika, see the ultimate fishing team, fishing town team, and enjoy the festivities from 10:30 on over at the Marina Pavilion, as well as hosted by Don Cherries, to help us together celebrate our designation as the ultimate fishing town, and as well accepting the check on behalf of everyone throughout the City of Port Colborne, which I said earlier will be going towards fishing activities here in our community. So with that, members of council, any questions or comments? With none, Regional Councillor Barrick sends his regrets this evening. I will attend to any regional council business that you may have. Questions or comments? Just a couple updates that I wanted to remind you of, which I'm sure you're fully aware of. Business planning sessions, water, wastewater is coming up. Business planning sessions with respect to transit is coming up. And the intent there is to then have council give their informed input. And I say informed because there's a lot of different intricacies attached to both issues. But ultimately, the desire is at the regional council level to ensure that all 12 municipalities, in fact, inject their input to then help create the final report that will come before regional council for both water, wastewater, and, of course, transit. So very important meetings. I hope all can attend. I know there's some conflicts because it's summer months, but do the best you can to attend so that way we can have that input passed on to the region. So with that, I'll move on to councillors' items. New business. Councillor Kenny. You good? You sure? Yeah. I don't want you to give me that look. Okay. Andrew, good? Bill, good? Dave, you all? Frank? Go ahead. I like the color of your shirt. A little bit black would make it look nicer. Fill it off your flyer colors. I'm proud of you.
Glad you like the way I dress. Just a couple of quick notes there. Our Main Street Gateway BIA, we met last week, and we've got some minutes that'll be forwarded to Ashley real soon. And although we may look like we're non-existent right now, we do to get together, and we do it on a quarterly basis, and we will have something for everyone shortly. I just wanted to compliment Chris and his team, and a special thank you to Dwight for helping out a lady on Omer Avenue with the tree. The response was extremely fast, and the lady sent me an email saying thank you very much, and I just wanted to pass it on to you and Dwight, and that's all I've got.
Thank you, Councillor Danch. But no further comments from council or updates? Staff, any updates or anyone to give us? Peter, aren't you on vacation? And you're good for you. Good for you. Just looked at you, I thought you're supposed to be on vacation. Members of staff, any updates? Dan, you're good? Chris, just one question. With respect to Kalali Street, where are we at? I know it's going to be a 2-year process to redoing Kalali from King on up west to pretty well Knoll Street. What's happening?
The region right now is finalizing property acquisitions.
Okay.
Final designs are being prepared, and they're aiming for tender in early fall.
Early fall?
So September-ish is what the region's aiming for right now. The property acquisitions are going to determine when that happens because they want to have all that in place first.
Good. Thanks, Chris. No further comments or questions from staff or council. We'll now move on to the adoption of the minutes. We have one set of minutes before us, the minutes of the 15th meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, dated June 10th, 2013. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Doucette, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Members of council, we'll start off with item 1 with respect to considering the items lifted this evening. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that the City Council receive this report for information purposes, that staff be instructed to move forward with the implementation of Phase 1 of the servicing of Site 4 of the East Side employment lands, and further, that a project advisory committee be formed consisting of a member of council, senior municipal staff, and Region of Niagara staff.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconded by Councillor Desmarais. Are there any questions or comments to this report? Now, you'll see that this report actually asks for a member of council to be appointed. I have Councillor Elliott, then I'll go back to Councillor Steele. You have the floor, actually, then I'll go to Councillor Elliott. Kenny.
I'll put my name forward for this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess upon reading it, the item, I've got plenty of questions. I guess in regards to the price, when you take a look at the overall price, 7 million, overall 19.5 million to service the entire area, 7 million which is proposed right now. In the report it says that this portion of the servicing is for the site that's city-owned property, highlighted in the red quadrilateral or whatever you want to call it on page 16. And it says that part of that site is covered by wetlands and woodlot. And I just wanted to know how much of that lot is not usable because of wetlands and the woodlot.
Mr. Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Elliott, if you look to the diagram, the map that shows the actual wetlands, the property that is owned by the City of Port Colborne does not contain a provincially significant wetland. You will see it contains some woodlot features of the property. So under the policies, there's still an ability to develop the lands. You could see some of the lands that are outside the city-owned property does have some constraints to it. So the city's property, 58 acres of land is all potentially open for development.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thanks, Dan. I guess the other thing that I look at too is there doesn't seem to be any plan for development. We're proposing to run wastewater up. And yet, I guess it's not like we're taking a look at what the industrial park turned out to be. There's not defined lots. There's there's no definition to what we're doing. It's just we're going to run up services to a 58-acre piece of land and do what with it. I guess the bigger question I have is, we're doing this. We don't hold any public information sessions. The report says that we want to either place the cost on the levy or we want to affix it to the wastewater side. And the entire cost being borne by the taxpayers. And yet we have no time for the taxpayers to come and give their side of what they want to see us do with an investment of $7 million. And I find it ironic that we don't allow the taxpayer to come and have time for comment when they're going to be the ones paying for it. I would think that with a $7 million investment, you would at least give the people that are going to pay for it time to come and see what we're going to do, what the proposal is, and what their comments are, whether they want it or not. I see this as being forward. We don't seem to have any direction on what we're going to do, what we're going to service, how we're going to go about things in town. We're going to spend $7 million on servicing some land, yet there's no report affixed to this report that shows the amount of service industrial land throughout Niagara. How many other lands are available right now? Who are we competing with? Should we service this? Who's coming to town? How many businesses? What's the economic impact statement? What can we rely on for return on investment? It says in the report that because it's also in the regional gateway, that the tax increase is spread over a 10-year period as opposed to 5 years for other lands located outside of it. So we're not going to gain the taxes that we thought we would for 10 years instead of 5. It also says that there's no development charges affixed to this land because it's in the industrial CIP. We have no way of recovering any of the charges that we're going to incur to run these services in. There's no allowance for anybody that owns land abutting these services as we run them up to contribute to them, when we know full well that the value of the land that runs next to these or lies next to these services will no doubtedly increase exponentially in value. And do we go to the neighbors to tell them to pitch in? Do we change our development charges to charge any industry that wants to come to town to help pay for it? I mean, we don't run services for anybody else and totally cost it ourselves except for this. Are we going to put the cost of servicing this land on the purchase price of any lands that we sell? I just don't see putting this entire cost directly on the taxpayer with no chance for them to offer their input into whether or not they want to pay for it. I would like to see an economic impact study. What can we expect by servicing these lands? Who will come? What are the people out there that have expressed interest? I find it ironic that nobody else in the region is pre-servicing industrial land. I don't know of anybody that's running pipe to greenfields nor brownfields. There's land that has been pre-serviced that hasn't been built on. We're taking up room in our debenture abilities. We've got the work center that's yet to be done at a cost that's thrown out there at $6 million. We have a downtown CIP that we have drawn up that we should implement. Where do we rank this on the list of things to do for this city, except that it just came to us and we're going to plow straight ahead with it? It says that this is contingent upon partnering with the region as the region runs their, I can't find it, I forgot my glasses. The region's going to run the trunk underneath the canal. Is this contingent on the region running that service under the canal and over to Highway 140? If it is, how long before the region runs that service over there? Or do we run our service and wait for the region to come to us? I think there's so many things that are not covered in this report that would serve us well to have some staff reports come back with regards to what's the economic impact statement, what can we expect, what's our return on investment, how are we going to fund this? Are we going to ask to change the development fees, development charges? Are we going to go to the neighboring properties to ask them to contribute? Will we have a public information session where we can ask the public for their comments? Let them see what we're going to do. I can't remember ever having a project of such great value put forth with no input from the public. And it just seems that if we're going to accept this tonight, it just seems like there's too many unanswered questions. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to bring this back into perspective, and I appreciate the comments from the Councillor. Just to clarify a few comments that were made. This is not new to Council, and I'll be very careful on how I make these comments deliberately. This is not new to council. We've had public meetings with respect to the gateway reports. Those public meetings and those gateway reports did include EISs, they included economic impact studies, they included the incentives, why the gateway is actually offering the incentives. Quite frankly, we're not prepared to roll up our carpet and not accept any further industrial development. Our entire economic strategy does depend on, one, the gateway strategy, being designated as a gateway because of the strengths that we have in this part of the region, that being land, multimodal transportation, and the list goes on. As I'm sure we've all read, if we've read the gateway strategy. The second study that we had done was the industrial land study that articulates all of which can answer probably 95% of your questions with respect to why, how, where, and when these lands should be developed. Yes, there are lands throughout the region that are pre-serviced, and we're trying not to do that no longer. We don't want to saddle the taxpayer with servicing lands and have nobody grow on those lands. And I think just drive down to 140 and we can see on the right-hand side that result. So we are trying to react as we go to service these lands with respect to accommodating people when they come into the city of Port Colborne and require an acreage parcel of property to develop on. And I'll let Stephen touch on that in a second. And the question with respect to strategies moving forward of what would happen on these lands, I'll recite a third report that Council should have been aware of, and I'm sure were because it came before you, and that being the wind energy strategy with respect to putting the green energy sector on those lands, and we dealt with that for the latter part of last session or last council, as well as into this term of council. The reality is the city of Port Colborne is out of inventory for industrial lands. We have 125-acre parcel left over on the Babcock lands across from Casco, and that is it. If a company like Young Bunslauer or like Casco was to come into Port Colborne and need over 25 acres of land, especially land alongside the canal, we would not be able to accommodate them. So once again, sitting in this chair, I am not ready to roll up the carpet with respect to developing our economy here in the city of Port Colborne and on behalf of the region of Niagara to some extent because of the fact that we've been designated as a gateway. This is part of our economic strategy. We are working in tandem with the region to ensure that that trunk gets under the canal. When I say in tandem, because that's part of this process, they're into it, as I mentioned to council on many occasions, they're into an environmental assessment process right now. We're hoping that process will be finished by the year end. It's a costly venture, but to the credit of those that work down at the region on a daily basis, they're moving forward with it within their 5-year capital plan. That's huge for the city of Port Colborne. That will enable us to now bring the same servicing that we have on the west side of the canal to the east side of the canal. Because, again, the west side of the canal is, with respect to industrial lands, is maxed out. Now, unless the city or city council, this or the future councils, are looking at rolling up our carpet and shutting the door to any future economic development, especially as it relates to an industry, then don't do nothing about this. Sit on it. The reason why the report's in front of you is to deal with it and to ensure that our future economy is healthy and the door is wide open for that new industry to come into Port Colborne. We have choices that are outlined in the report. Those choices exist with respect to the levy, taking on debt, or acquiring it through future involvement in terms of our return on investment by bringing new business into Port Colborne vis-a-vis a new assessment, new jobs, and of course, the incentives that Councillor Elliott did recite is just that. It's an incentive to try and lure these companies here into Port Colborne. But that's all part of our economic strategy. And as I said, I would only expect that we would move forward with those initiatives to therefore acquire new economy here in the community versus not. So with that, before I go to council, I'm going to allow Stephen to elaborate on a bit of what we're hearing out there, especially as it relates to the reason why this report's before us today. Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I can certainly speak to some of the questions that Councillor Elliott raised. Many of the questions are also appropriate for other directors that are here in attendance tonight. In terms of how the departments, how this report got to where the report is. As the Mayor mentioned, there is a council-approved economic development strategy, and concurrently with that strategy, led by the engineering department as well as the planning department, was the industrial land strategy, which looked at areas within the urban area boundary that were suitable for industrial development and servicing. From that strategy, a number of sites were identified. Sites 1 through 5, I believe it was, were identified as potential sites for future servicing to accommodate industrial growth, realizing that industry does require water and wastewater. The site that is being discussed in the report that Mr. Lee authored, the report that's before us this evening, is a portion of Site 4. And it's the roughly 58-60 acres which is between Ramey Road and the Welland Canal, which makes it a very strategic site for future industrial development. Also is a very strategic site in that it has quite a lengthy Ramey Road frontage, which provides an opportunity for access off that municipal road into the site. In terms of lot configurations, I believe the way that the report addressed and was presented provides the ultimate flexibility in terms of being able to divide the land based on the individual potential industry that requires the space. And certainly I can confirm the Mayor's comments that right now the largest serviced industrial piece of land available in the city, just under 25 acres, 23.7 acres. So if it was a fabricator, a metal company, a food company, a bio company that needed 30, 40, 50, 60 acres of land, we would not be able to accommodate them. And this is a way of charting a course forward to be able to accommodate new investments that can create investment and jobs in the community. In addition to that, I would point out that one of the authors of the report did mention some alternates to the financing based on the frontage of land, that sort of thing. Not my report, so I would defer to those departments to speak to that in more detail. As well with the sale of industrial land, obviously there would be a recovery of some of the costs through the sale to the new business that would be coming and locating in Port Colborne. So I believe I was able to speak to some of Councillor Elliott's questions, and happy to speak to any others.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Chris, did you have any comment with respect to the region's participation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The region, as you had said earlier, is in the EA process. They estimate that there'll be about 4 years to their construction under the canal. Their trunk main for the water that's going through, we will simply be piggybacking onto that, and that will complete the loop from the east to the west side. There's currently a regional main at the intersection of Chippewa and Highway 140, which we would simply connect to at this time.
Thank you, Chris. Peter, any comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just there are a couple options that are available to council in funding this project, which was outlined in the report, and the difference between the two options is basically whether or not it's within the urban area and the rural area. Water and sewer is rural area. If it's fully on the tax roll, on the tax, then it's being spread. The cost is being spread over the entire population, both residential, commercial, and industrial, rather than just the water area. So there's those two options in looking at how it may be funded in the future, and we do have enough debt room at this point in time to move ahead with the project, along with other projects that we do have coming up. And I mentioned, I think, the last meeting that a report will be coming to council next month with regard to the overall debt capacity and the projects that we do have coming forward for council to look at.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Councillor Demering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say I would go on record as wholeheartedly supporting moving forward and keeping this city open for business. That's very, very important to me. But I'm very concerned with one comment, and that is that there would be no public input into this process. I've not known the city to go forward with projects of this nature without having public input. So could you please, whichever member of staff could respond to this, please explain where the public input would come in and exactly what form that would take?
I'll go to Mr. Aquilina first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councilor Desmarais, as the mayor alluded to, this report follows on the heels of the industrial land strategy that was presented to council, that was publicly made known by ACOM. So there was no secret there. The public was engaged, and there was an opportunity to address council. As we move forward with this actual development, there's going to be additional reports that are going to have to come forward to council to address certain issues on the financing. What is it going to cost? We don't know yet on the costs. So a lot of these reports are going to come back to council. If there's council direction to engage the public, we will be more than happy to do that, and we will follow the direction of council. Council was just going to have to direct staff to do so, but the intent was for staff to come back to council.
Great. Thank you, Dan. But I do want to emphasize the fact that when we did the industrial land study, we had full public forums, participation from the public. Those forums included the entire inventory of industrial lands that were identified within the study, as well as the costing of same to do the servicing to those. So the public's been fully engaged in the creation of that study. But as Dan alluded to as well, and this council has been very proactive with respect to, while we take the next steps moving forward, especially with an economic strategy, that we would also engage the public as well. But keep in mind, folks, you know, you're here to do a job. And we would expect no different from the members sitting around this horseshoe, listening to your constituents, of course. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions through you. First of all, Chris, it starts off, so when I read this report, I thought, how can I support spending that kind of money? But then I thought, we did a study in 2010 for the reason to bring employment lands into our city. So there's a cost associated with that, and that cost is servicing. But it starts off to say that there has to be expressions of interest, terms of reference, and I wondered if the cost of $6 million, does that include the engineering consultants that you're talking about for expressions of interest?
So your Mayor to Councillor Kenny, yes, those costs include all the engineering and study costs.
Councillor.
Thank you. So when you're estimating the whole thing is going to be around 6.5 to 7 million, that's everything, design, planning, okay. Then I read farther in the report, and it says that because we're in that gateway area, and Mr. Aquilina, if I could go through, ask you, it says gateway CIP identifies lands as strategic locations for investment and are eligible to receive incentives for a 10-year period. So does that mean that we could then apply for those incentives
Mr.
to lower the cost?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, those CIP lands are actually for private investment to tap into the financial incentive programs.
Okay.
There is no mechanism for the
so
city.
that company could do that?
Correct. And then both the region and the city can look at tax increment financing, what other incentives are available, both the Gateway CIP as well as the city's industrial CIP.
Councillor.
So, thank you. So it makes the lands more attractive to an investor, right?
Correct.
Is that right, Mr.?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely.
Great. And then just one more question to you, Mr. Aquilina. It says that the city's development charges bylaw did not forecast and calculate charges payable to cover the costs to service these lands. Can we do that now?
Mr. Aquilina.
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, what we would have to do is open up the whole development charges study and to look at that again. So we put in the report, when that study was commenced in 2009, this wasn't on the forecast. There was no appropriate charges levied towards this particular area. And so one thing that council may want to look at in the future is how you may want to cover the costs of servicing this.
Just a question, Dan, and that's a great point, B. And the reason why is because, as Dan said, development charges study last time we did it didn't include this area of the city as part of its portfolio. My question to you then, therefore, Dan, based on that comment, is would we, because it's not site-specific in terms of development charges, would we be able to gain development charges from other projects in other parts of the city to help pay or offset the cost of the servicing for this part of the city.
Mr. Mayor, through you, the concern, though, with the development charges bylaws, you really need to have a mechanism in place to actually allocate those charges to a specific area, and it should have been studied. I think there would be a review as to what we actually can do and the different mechanisms that could be in place, whether it's through the development charges bylaw or any other sort of mechanism that may exist.
And the same can be said at the regional level too, to dedicate some of those development charges possibly down here at the south end.
Correct, yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Councillor Kenny?
Thank you. And just, are we deciding on this report tonight, like choosing our councillor rep? Because if you need more than one, I'd be more than willing to sit on with Councillor Steele if you need more than one. But I just want to know, through you, your worship, to Peter, he mentioned the cost, annual cost of one and annual cost of two, and how it's spread over a different tax base. I would be in favor, very much in favor of having that spread over the whole tax base, not just the urban, because the urban will pay more already. If I'm not correct, if I'm looking at this in their wastewater fixed charge. So I guess I'd like to ask that we consider cost number one, which would be tax would cost the average person $45.82 according to this, rather than the other one. Is that, if you could explain that to me, Mr.
Peter?
Sinez, thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Option one is basically the full cost being on the tax levy. And when we did the servicing for the current industrial park, the cost of that debenture was on the full tax levy, on the full assessment base. That is option one, which would the cost of that to an average assessed home, about $170,000, would be about $30 to $32 cost for the full $6.5 to $7 million. Option two provides, actually, there's the annual cost one and annual cost two that's in the report. Annual cost one is based on if it's a $6.5 million project. Annual cost two is a $7 million project. So what you'll find is, so on the tax base itself, on option one, it'll cost the average taxpayer $30 to $32, depending on the overall cost, $6.5 million to $7 million. If it's partially on the levy and partially on the water and wastewater, then it's going to cost anywhere from $46 to $48, depending on the $6.5 million to the $7 million. So it overall to the taxpayer, on the tax levy, it is a lower cost because it's spreading the cost over the entire tax base. Where if you're adding to the water fixed and the wastewater fixed charge, then that's being allocated to just your urban area who is actually on the water accounts and gets a water bill. And the tax levy, then a small portion of that, because that's the roads and portion of the overall cost, that is being taxed on the tax levy, which then is over the whole assessment base itself. So, you have basically your two options is fully assessed, or part of it is on the tax levy and part is on your water and wastewater bill.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor?
Thank you. So then, we're not really deciding on option one or option two tonight. That'll be up to the
Committee.
the Project Advisory Committee, which is great. Well, I think we have to go forward with this. I would be supporting it, and as I said, if you want more than one councillor, I'd be more than willing to sit on this committee as well. I think it's important. Yes, I do believe we need. It's funny that you should say that, because I was out the other evening and just kind of mentioned how people, as soon as they see you, they say, "What are you going to do about our tax is? How come we can't get industry in?" And I said, "Well, what if I told you that? What if I told you that we could, but it's going to cost to service lands to get them in?" And they were saying, "I'm all for it." That was only a half a dozen people, but friends of mine who say, if it takes money to get money, then sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to invest money in a project to get money back as a tax base. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
I think our current industrial park that's currently maxed out is proof of that. Members of council, further questions or comments? Yvonne, before I go back to you, David, Yvonne or Frank, anything to say? Nothing? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Elliott, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I kind of on the fence about pre-servicing. I don't know if I believe in the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And I really find it disturbing that it's put forward that if we don't do this, that we're going to roll up the carpet and go home. I find that this one project, and if we don't spend the $7 million in services, we're closed shop. We're not taking anybody else in. We might as well tell Stephen to go away and fire him. And we don't need an economic development officer. That we're not open for development because the economic development study that was commissioned that Miller-Dixon Blaze did said that we should focus on Lone Eagles, that we should focus on development, retention, and expansion of existing industries. And I think the third thing was to draw in new investment from outside. And I'd be kind of interested to know that, or ask this question, that when we had our public meetings about the Gateway Economic Zone, did it say that the entire servicing fees would be borne by the taxpayer? Did we tell them that back then when they all come out and looked at the maps and saw where we were going to service and the lands that were incorporated? I think everybody gets the incentives and why we have incentives and why we offer them. We are trying to attract investment. And other cities have the same CIPs and the same incentives. So we're battling against other municipalities within Niagara. And yet, we just found out a couple of weeks ago that a preliminary dollar figure for servicing would have been $5 million, was bandied about. This report says 6.5 to 7. So I'm wondering if we found out a couple of weeks ago or a few months ago the $5 million level, how did we know back then when we had the Gateway open houses and public information sessions, how did we know then what the cost of servicing was going to be if we just found out a month ago? And this one is another 30% higher than what that initial one was. I don't think we're closing up shop. I'm not totally against this. What I'm against is putting this totally on the back of the taxpayer. You want to have incentives for somebody to come to town and set up shop, that's great. We're giving them the tax incentives. We only charge you charges on the first 5,000 square feet. Anything after that, development charges are waived. You know, there's 5 or 6 things that you can apply for through the incentive plan. But when it comes to running services, I don't see why the city picks up the total tab for the services side. We've got plans of subdivision on properties throughout town. If a developer was to come and say, I'll build houses, you run the services, would we jump at that? Because basically that's what this is. We're going to pick up the cost, the total cost of running water to these guys. They're not going to pay anything. They have the 10-year tax step, which means they get the money back. We get less money. I think it was the mayor that said that that negatively impacts our OMPF funds because we're not collecting the tax dollars, but the OMP funds get reduced because the assessment growth is there. So it's a double negative. I got no problem servicing. I got a problem with the cost, and I got a problem with throwing it on the taxpayers and say, these guys are coming to town to make money, and we're paying for the services to get there. We're giving them the incentives to come, and yet we're still telling the people, you have to pay for the servicing. That's the part that bothers me. We don't offer that servicing prize or gift to anybody else. I don't know if a developer walked in here tomorrow and said, I'll build that subdivision starting next month if you service it. Would you go for that? You know, it's basically the same thing. Yeah, it makes locating in town cheaper. Yep, the incentives are still there. But the taxpayer is the one that's footing the bill. And I guess the one question I have to Peter too is, That 3.89% interest rate, is that guaranteed for the 40 years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that rate is at the date that the report was written, so that can change.
Okay, so if we debenture the $7 million, we get the 3.89% interest rate for 40 years?
Peter?
Correct.
Okay. Then we should borrow lots of money. I mean, we should do all the projects that we got in town. I mean, we're going to build the operations center. We got a CIP downtown that's all detailed drawing and ready to go. I mean, for 3.89%, you know, that's why I say, where do we rank our projects that we want to see done? We want to do this. Taxpayers are paying. You know, the people that are paying taxes downtown that want this CIP to move forward, that have paid taxes for years and will pay taxes for years, want to see something done with their downtown. Yeah, we don't move on that. You know, rationalize. What do we want to do? Do we want to do this? We better find out how we're going to finance it and who we're going to ask to contribute before we go forward with this. And that's my one concern. We've got to get everybody to contribute because we're going to make the abutting lands more valuable and our land itself. So we better get somebody else to kick in and help us out.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just a few questions to Mr. Aquilina and maybe Mr. Lee. Are we servicing the whole lands, or are we bringing services there so that they can be serviced by the person that is going to be building on it? That's the first thing.
Mr. Lee.
To you, Mr. Mayor, the water main and the sanitary sewer will service the entire site. They have to be extended to individual properties depending which properties go in which direction. In other words, is the east side, north, south? So there would be extensions to specific depending on the demands as the lots are sold.
So what we're doing is essentially bringing the services up there, and once they develop it, then they will have to tap into it, and they will have to pay to tap into it and do everything else, as long as it's there. That's number one. Okay. Number two, who is essentially the developer here right now?
Mr. Aquilina.
Through Mr. Mayor, the developer is the city of Port Colborne.
Okay. Who pays for developing any area that is to be developed?
Mr. Aquilina.
If it's a private development, the private enterprise, private developer pays.
Okay. But what I'm saying, though, is it's the developer that pays, and we are the developers. Therefore, who is supposed to pay? And how do we not do this? Because we're running out of industrial land. So the argument, I find it difficult to sit on this argument of, well, we're not supposed to pay, let's make everybody else pay. But yet we are the developers, and if we had a developer come to us and ask us this, that's the first thing we would do, is tell them you have to pay to get that developed. So we're doing exactly what we're supposed to do to get lands that will be financially viable to companies and will give us employment lands. Without this, we probably, I would say, we'd be under 50% possibility of getting employment lands. We need this to get those employment lands. And since we're the developer, yeah, we should be paying for it. And then as we sell the lands, we will recover some of these costs. But I think it's important to realize that that is what is happening here. We are the developers.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments or questions from members of council? Staff? Go ahead, Mr. Aquilina.
Mr. Mayor, if I just would like to make one comment for council to consider, these lands are the future of Port Colborne. They're the future jobs that are in Port Colborne, and they would contribute to the tax base, and it's also the spin-offs of the economics of actually having jobs on these lands. So I leave that to council for their consideration, and as I mentioned before, the reports will be forthcoming to council as we move forward along the process. If council,
It just seems like deja vu. And what I mean by that is that we talked about 6-7 years ago about building a new multi-use center here in Port Colborne, and we had a great deal of discussion on that. And we can see how that's elevated this community to the next level. And in hindsight, would it have been a bad decision not to do it? And I think we can all answer that question, especially those that have frequented that facility within the last 3 or 4 months. This, and Dan's right, this elevates the community to the next level with respect to our economic strategy well into the future. Yes, it's a difficult decision to make because there's some money attached to it, but can we afford not to make it? Simply put, look around. Look around Port Colborne, look around the region. And when it comes to an opportunity to take the next steps toward the strategy that we've talked about for so long, when it comes to the Gateway strategy, when it comes to the economic development strategy, which was the start of that whole process, the industrial land study, targeting certain sectors like the wind energy sector. Yes, there are CIPs attached to sectors besides industry. We have a CIP downtown, Main Street, and you can see what the result of that was. We have a CIP downtown here, Clarence, King, and West, and Charlotte, and we're hoping for bigger and better things to happen there within that same CIP. We have a CIP for the brownfields, which will encourage brownfield development with service land that's otherwise stagnant right now. We have a CIP for the waterfront. Councillor Elliott's quite correct. We do want to prioritize and figure out how we're going to fund that, just like we're trying to do here with the servicing. In my opinion, you don't have a choice, quite frankly. As I said earlier, if you want to roll up the carpet to those companies that are presently coming into the city of Port Colborne requiring the 25 up of acres, the Young Bunslauers of the world, the Cascos of the world, then you have to have this land available. If you don't, then decide not to. And we'll just continue to bring in those other companies as well as we should, just simply concentrate on business expansion and retention. But this council has decided to take it to the next level, to expand besides expansion, retention, and those other companies that were identified to make available lands for other companies that require it, like Stevens Entertaining almost daily. The last thing I do want to say is, through this process, Chris, Peter, and Dan, is there an opportunity to utilize it, to utilize the process as getting the word out with respect to what we have to offer? I know Stephen's already doing it with respect to the gateway designation, the incentives attached to the gateway designation, the land availability, the land size, because it's more than just the lands that we own, it's the entire gateway lands, which I believe, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, is over 350 acres. Okay. The amenities attached to it, vis-a-vis hopefully servicing someday, but also short line rail, main line rail, the Welland Canal, as well as the completion of the East-West Arterial Road, which is the first leg of the Mid-Penn Corridor connecting the Peace Bridge QEW to the 140, which will be done, by the way, in 3 years. The trunk coming under the canal, which I'm hearing 4 years, as well as the other road networks that we have available to us, like the 406. The next layer would be the FTZ. I met with 6 conservative MPs last night from Ottawa, including Rick Dykstra. They're very excited what we're doing here. So is there a possibility to leverage this project to acquire a free trade zone, to offer more incentives from the federal level? And then lastly, and this goes to Councillor Elliott's concern, is with respect to leveraging any funding that we might have to then only have to contribute 1/3 of the funding versus the full funding, like we did with the Valley Center, like we did with Main Street, like we did with the recreational trails. So I'm sure next year, when that funding envelope is presented to us again, like it was this year, we'll be more prepared because we have the study finalized to then try to leverage the funding that would otherwise be needed and eliminate the funding that would ultimately come from the property taxpayer. So there's many opportunities, but I agree, and I want to go back to Councillor Kenny's comments. We don't know that until we get the process going and the study happens and we get the committee underway to then come to that point in time. So I use that as the final comments, but I think it's an exciting time. Let's move it forward, and when it comes back to council, at the end of the day, the funding question will have to be answered, but as well, there's still opportunity to offset that funding from other programs like we do at the Valley Center that may present itself. So, Councillor Steele?
Thank you, Worship. Just with regards to this, in reading the original recommendation, it does said consisting of members or members of council. So I see Councillor Kenny has put her name forward. If there's any other councillors that want to, I would throw it as the mover, as a friendly amendment to accept the councillors that want to sit on this committee.
Okay, so as part of your recommendation, you're putting yourself.
And Councillor Kenny, and anybody else that wants.
Any further members that want to be on that committee? Councillor Elliott, great. Any further members? I'll be sitting on the committee myself as well, but the more the better. As well, you can see outlined in your report who else is going to be involved. So it'll be a very robust process. Okay? Councillor Elliott, go ahead.
Just a quick question, through you to Chris. In the report, it says the proposed work to extend services northerly to the industrial lands will require coordination of two projects, speaking about the region's project and this one. And it says timing for the construction of the new trunk water main will be critical for this project and may require a partnership between the region and the city. Does that mean without the region running their trunk over, that this project can't be done? And why? Because that's what it sounds like here. And yet you said that they may be 4 years out running their portion.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Elliott, the regions, as I said previously, the region is about 4 years out to do the crossing under the canal. They currently have a trunk water main at the intersection of Chippewa. We would simply connect to the end of that and then make the provisions at second concession for their crossing when it happens. So we would, as we've done in the past within the city, engineering here in the city of Port Colborne has done numerous trunk water main construction jobs for the region, Bell Street, Elizabeth. This would just be another continuation of that process, much like we did on Charlotte Street here and Catherine, where we replaced the trunk water main that feeds the tower. So that's what we meant by the partnership and a coordination process.
Thanks, Chris. With no further comments or questions, members, I'll call the question. Your pleasure. All those in favor? Opposed? That'd be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 2. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Department of Planning and Development Report number 2013-33, subject recommendation report for the designation of the Louis J. Cicaluna Garage, municipally known as 293 King Street, under the Ontario Heritage Act, that the Council of the City of Port Colborne approve the bylaw attached as Appendix A to designate the Louis J. Cicaluna Garage, municipally known as 293 King Street, to be of cultural heritage value or interest to the City of Port Colborne pursuant to the provisions of Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, RSO 1990, Chapter 0.18.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Danch, questions or comments? Councillor Kenny, that's your hand go up, Dave? Councillor Kenny?
I just want to say thank you very much that this is finally being designated. I really have to. It was a long struggle with the owner of the property who did not want this property designated. But this garage, if you've read the report, it is a heritage building, and I'm glad we stuck to our guns and had it designated. There's only 2 in Canada left of buildings of this nature. And yes, it needs a lot of work. We missed out because we were in negotiations and because we thought this might go to the OMB. We missed out on a grant from Benjamin Moore, who were going to give us all the paint for free, which we just needed volunteers to paint. But there will be other projects that the Heritage Committee will apply for, and hopefully that we can help the owner of this garage restore this. He will be getting a tax reduction, so we've asked him to use that money to help restore this to its original way. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Dan, just a quick question to that. Is that through a TIF he's getting that tax reduction?
Through Mr. Mayor, this is something that council approved back in 2008, that all properties that were designated historically would be subject to that tax relief. It's not through a TIF, it's a, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's under the heritage.
Okay. So how would you determine how much that reduction would be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a calculation based on the number of properties that we have in the that are designated heritage, gotcha. And the maximum is $4,000.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dan. Further questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Just quick, and I'll throw it out. What can he do to the building besides the part that's being designated? How much control does he have over on the back part of it, and what can he do and exactly what does he have to retain. The facades and stuff, I understand in the front of the building. Can he chop the back part of the building off and knock it down and do whatever he wants to do? The whole building is encompassed in this, and he has to leave it as is?
Mr. Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott, the designation bylaw actually pertains to 70.5 feet on the north side and 38 feet on the south side. The lands to the east are not designated. So the property owner can actually, if he's looking to do plans on that property, he's allowed to do that as long as he doesn't actually affect the designated features of the property as you see in the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Further questions or comments? Councilor, you're fine?
So that means everything from the facade back, because you're going north and south, you're not, to the east, he can do basically what he wants, right? Well, that's the building.
Mr. Aquilina?
Through Mr. Mayor, Schedule C to the bylaw actually outlines the features that have been designated. So the lands that are east of that 70.5 feet are not designated. Yes, to the east, for the front facade to the east on the north side. So those features cannot be touched, the walls can't be touched. Same with on the south side. All the features that are protected are in that bylaw that have to be adhered to.
Councilor? Okay, thank you, Dan. Further questions or comments? With none, your pleasure to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Anybody opposed? Okay, carried. That's 2 motions in a row that are unanimous. Good for you guys. Okay, we'll now move on to item 4. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Department of Planning and Development Report number 2013-37, subject official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, file number D09-01-13 and D14-04-13, known as 380 Elm Street. One, that the Council of the City of Port Colborne approves the official plan amendment attached hereto as Appendix A to add a special policy to permit warehousing as an acceptable use in the urban residential designation. 2, that the Council of the City of Port Colborne approves the zoning bylaw amendment attached hereto as Appendix B, rezoning the land from existing P Public and Park Zone to site-specific NC 367 Business and Professional Office and R2 368 Warehouse Zones. 3, that the city clerk is hereby authorized to direct and proceed with the giving of notice to the passing of bylaw in accordance with the Planning Act. And 4, pursuant to the provisions of Section 34:17 of the Planning Act, no further notice of public meeting be required.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Whoever seconded that, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? I have Councillor Kenny.
Just one second,
That's
Your
it?
Worship.
Okay.
Well, I'm just happy, I'm very happy that this report has come forward. During the public meeting that we had, there were several residents who were concerned about the warehouse. In the interim, since that meeting, both the applicant and Mr. Aquilina have met, and they've alleviated some of those concerns. So I want to thank Mr. Aquilina, first of all, for getting back to the applicant and addressing those, and really the applicant themselves for agreeing to put up the fencing, which, not just the trees to block that area, but some fencing, some screening fencing as well. And it's more than what you have to have, but the applicant, in fact, proposed this solution. And so I'm very pleased, and I just hope we get another unanimous support of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Further questions or comments? With none, your pleasure. All those in favor? Opposed? We carry.
3 in a row.
3 in a row, unanimous, guys. What's up with that? You guys are good. Congratulations. Now go watch the game. Text me back what the score is, Jim, would you?
There's no game tonight, is there?
Same sex to Boston.
you
When
told me it was
I
tomorrow.
said that, when I said there was
I
no
thought you
game
told me it
tonight,
was tomorrow.
I was saying because they're going to be watching this on COGECO tomorrow.
Oh.
But really, tonight, being a Monday night, yes, the game is tonight.
Yeah.
A very important game at that. Okay, guys, we're going to move on to item 9, Councillor Kenny night. Last time it was Elliott night, now it's Kenny night. Councillor Kenny, you're up. B, you're up.
Just getting my iPad here all, number 9. Sorry, Department of Community and Corporate Services Division Report number 2013-20, subject allocation of 2012 general operating surplus. That the Council of the City of Port Colborne approve the allocation of the 2012 general operating surplus as described in Schedule A to this report, and B, that the Council of the City of Port Colborne authorize the City Treasurer to establish appropriate reserve and reserve funds and allocate funds as described in Schedule A.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Elliott. Councillor Kenny, before I go to you for comments, and I do apologize, I'd like to have Peter identify why the surplus exists. Specifically, Peter, the last paragraph of the first page, where you outline in 2012, so on and so forth, with respect to what we experienced. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this year for 2012, the city did experience an overall surplus, which is good news to our general operations of about $340,000, and that was a combination of a number of things. More specifically, though, as the mayor mentioned, supplementary taxes that we did receive in 2012, exceeded our budget by $93,000. Our health and safety training, we had some funds there for 2012 that was not spent, was not able to be spent in 2012, and we're carrying that over into 2013 of $23,000. Our insurance claims, we had a better year in 2012 with regard to insurance claims, so we had about $44,000 of unexpended funds for insurance claims, and we're requesting that those be put in and replenish our reserve for insurance claims in the future. Our winter maintenance, we had savings last year in 2012 of approximately $39,000. Our transit revenue was exceeded by $32,000. And our arena and our pool operation in 2012, we had savings of approximately $56,000. And we also received an energy incentive grant for the Valley Health and Wellness Center of $27,000. So those are some of the major things. There's a lot of within all the departments and within the whole budget. There were some surpluses, some deficits that back and forth. Either we had increased revenues, or we overspent in one area but underspent in another area. But in essence, those are the main items that sort of makes up our $340,000. And as the Schedule A that we have attached there are some items that are committed for 2013 because they were not spent in 2012, approximately about $66,000. We're asking also that approximately $63,000 be put back into replenish reserves that we had spent in previous years. And we're recommending the additional $211,000 be put into various types of reserves that were not funds that were not spent, that we look at every year adding funds to because of certain things like tree trimming. We had $12,000 we're looking to put into tree trimming because that is an issue that we have right now with trees. And winter maintenance, establish our winter maintenance reserve. Again, transit, sidewalks, accessibility committee, they did not spend some of their funding, the same with MIAC, so we're going to bring forward those funds for those groups. And also the savings from the arena and the pool, we're recommending put that towards the paving of the additional area for the Valley Health and Wellness Center, the parking lot. And also the energy incentive program, that we put that into the Valley Health and Wellness Center stabilization reserve. So those are sort of the types of things that we've recommended to council. If council so chooses, then to approve it tonight, then that's what we'll be looking at spending those funds in the future.
Thank you, Peter. Questions, comments? Further? Councillor Elliott?
Just a couple of questions. The $8,400 for the recreation programmer, why $8,400?
Those were funds that we had saved in 2012, and when we did the budget for 2013, I anticipated that we'd have those savings and rolled that into 2013 budget.
Okay. And the $1,950 for the marina travel lift surcharge?
Yes, that's an additional charge in 2012 that we were charging $25 per lift to put into a capital reserve for future works on that travel lift.
Okay, so that just come out of the revenue from the marina side?
True,
okay.
Correct.
So my big question, now that you've got all of these facts and figures, my question from last meeting, what did the marina net out at last year? Can you tell me today?
The marina was overall was about $150,000 over budget, and that's a combination of revenues. As I mentioned before, we did not meet our revenue expectations that we thought we would through the promotions, through some that we did lose. Transient revenues were down, along with the seasonal revenues and a few other things. And we had unexpected expenditures with regard to the Marine Service building itself, where we had some issues with some mold and
the way it was left.
It was basically the way we received it. So we had some issues with that. We had to spend quite a bit of money just to get that up to par, and also some of the docks that we had some unexpected things that we didn't envision. We had to put some money into it.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Councillor Kenny. No, I'm not mad at you.
Through you to Peter. Peter, first of all, I was thrilled that we actually were in a surplus. And I was just wondering, in regards to, there's a couple of things. With the transit, because we had that surplus, is that that's going to be allocated right back into the transit funds?
Peter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it would go to transit reserve. And the committee right now is looking at a few areas of extending services, and we will be bringing forward a report back to council, to the committee, and then to council with regard to how we may be looking at spending those funds on transit itself.
Because I always think, just because we have the money doesn't mean we have to spend it. So I kind of like sometimes just keeping it there, just in case you have a bump in the road. So I'm glad it's going into reserve. And with the winter maintenance, I kind of look back at 2011, and I noticed that we had a little bit left in 2011. And could we have an average, like what they spend average, so that when it comes to budget time, that maybe we'll have a reserve because we're asking too much at budget time. So if we had an idea of what the average is, then that's what they would get, the average. And that money could stay right in reserves in case we do have a bad winter.
Peter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Engineering department does budget based on that average and the types of snowfalls that we do have on an annual basis. Some years are worse than others, and 2012 was a good year. And also in some cases, we may have a good year, but maybe a bad year in other things, so those funds sort of offset some other areas that may be overexpended. So, but this year we saw that we were able to have those funds and put them in reserve in case we do have a year that we have very bad weather and can use that.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions or comments? Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Peter. The transit, I forgot I was going to ask. Is that strictly ridership that went up?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was a portion of ridership and the provincial sales tax grant that we received. We received, I believe, about $10,000 or $12,000 more than what we had budgeted for. We budgeted conservatively.
Great. Further questions or comments? Just one question, Peter. I'm not sure if it will go to you or to Harry. With respect to the parking lot, you have here identified a 20 to 36 and 27 539. Is that going to do the entire parking lot? terms of what we had talked about or spoken about with respect to everything to the west of the existing parking lot?
Right. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to you. The $56,000 that we have here being set aside to the parking lot would only cover about a third of the cost. We're also looking at the roads development charges. We're looking into that for possibly about $50,000, and another $50,000 from the sale of the pool and the West Side Arena. Sort of a combination so that we can, because I believe the price is around $150,000 to do that part of the parking lot.
So, and I want to put this in perspective so that people understand exactly what we're talking about with respect to having the revenue available to this work. We have $340,786 in surplus.
Right.
How much do we get for the sale of the pool?
The pool was proceeds of $500,000.
But it nets out at?
And that's going to net out about $350,000 with the demolition of the of the pool. And the West Side Arena was $275. $275.
Okay, there's no net out there because there's no need to do any work there.
Correct, and council's direction at this point in time is that the net funds would go into a stabilization reserve for the Valley Health and Wellness Center.
Excellent. Now that's a perfect segue into my next question. With respect to a variance at the Valley Center, is council going to receive some variance to see where we're standing with respect to the operating of the Valley Center?
Yes, we, through you, Mr. Mayor, we did have a meeting, not last week, the week before, of staff looking at the operations of the Valley Center and how things are going to date, and where we're going to be, hopefully be in September with regard to both operations and also from a financial perspective. So I'll be looking at where we are from a variance perspective, and at council's wish, we can bring a report back to council or report individually.
That would be great, because the last thing we want to do is end up like in December and find out. We don't want to be like what happened in Niagara Falls a few years ago. Yeah. No offense, Peter.
I know you didn't want to say that, but yes.
But I don't want to see us in November or December finding out that we're $400,000 in a hole. It'd be nice to get the variance now.
Yeah, we're looking at and trying to monitor that. We've had some, and the one thing that we're having, which is unique this year, is the fact that both arenas are coming out, and which means there's a little bit more cost in putting the ice back in, because normally once it's in, it's in. But this year we're rig 2. We've had to take it out and put it in for warranty purposes to check things out. So, that's an anomaly that normally wouldn't happen each year. So that'll be a little different that we'll have to compensate for this year.
And the reason why I ask about the variance, members of council, is because we have some funds that are obviously going to be made available through the sale of both properties, the West Side Arena as well as the pool. But we also have the $340,000 here. That's a surplus from 2012. I just want to be sure that we don't have to go back to the taxpayers, just in case we have a blip in our variances this year. Go ahead.
And also in this reserve, we're putting out of the surplus, we're putting another $26,000 into a capital reserve, which is unallocated. So that's sort of a little bit that can either be brought in for the parking lot or for into the Valley Health and Wellness Center stabilization in case it's needed in the future too.
Excellent, excellent. So going back to my first question, when are we planning on completing that parking lot? I'm looking at the three of you. So whatever two you're going to step back and leave the other one stepping forward.
I'll step forward. I know staff have discussed it, and when in talking to Ron last week, I know he's trying to move that forward. And the other thing is we are also talking to a few suppliers.
Fair enough.
And we're looking at hopefully maybe reducing some of our costs based on some type of sponsorships.
Surplus. But guys, we gotta get it done this year. Right now, it's messy down there, especially with soccer starting. It's pretty messy. So if we can sooner rather than later, it would be great. Last question or last comment I want to make. And it goes back to Dave's comment last week about the debt chart that you're preparing. Just to throw it to you, I'm not sure if you got my message today, Peter, with respect to when that report comes back to council, if we can have some benchmarks and comparisons to other municipalities as well and where they're at, as well as where we're at, and include the debt to operating. Okay, so basically, yes, here's the debt to operating, and here's the comparables to other municipalities. So that really gives perspective to it. So it's better understood. So let's put it that way. Great, thank you. Okay, so no further comments or questions on this? All those in favor? Opposed? Come on, I want to set a record here, guys. Dave. Is there anybody opposed? Nobody opposed? Okay, so that's unanimous too. That's carried. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we'll move on. We'll now move on to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion this evening, members? With none, I will ask for a motion to adjourn this portion of this evening's agenda. Councillor Steele, Councillor Danch. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And that's a record. All unanimous. We'll now move on to the council portion of tonight's agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
Thank you, Ashley. Motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Steele. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Disclosures of interest? With none, I'll move on to the minutes. I have two sets of minutes here. The first being the minutes of the 19th meeting special of council dated June 3rd, 2013, and the second being the minutes of the 20th meeting regular of council dated June 10th, 2013. Double mover and seconder, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Kenny. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Any items requiring a separate discussion this evening? Mover for the items on your list. Councillor Steele, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. No proclamations. That's a first, Madam Clerk. I do have one set of minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. We have the minutes of the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum Board of Management dated April 16th, 2013. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny. Seconded by Councillor Doucette. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Notices of motion? Are there any? With none, Madam Clerk, introduction of the bylaws, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the following bylaws be read first, second, third time, and finally passed. Bylaw 59717713, a bylaw to designate the Shikuna Garage, municipally known as 293 King Street, as being of architectural and historical value or interest. Bylaw 59727813, being a bylaw to authorize entering into an encroachment agreement with Jesse McDonald regarding 20 Clarence Street, Port Colborne. Bylaw 59737913, being a bylaw to adopt amendment number 87 to the official plan for the city of Port Colborne. Bylaw 59748013, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 11509781 as amended, respecting lands known as Part Lot 29, Concession 1, municipally known as 380 Elm Street. Bylaw 59758113, a bylaw to amend bylaw 59455113, a bylaw to set and levy the rates of taxation for city purposes for the year 2013. And finally, bylaw 59768213, being a bylaw to authorize entering into an intermunicipal tax collection agreement between the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne and the Regional Municipality of Niagara.
Thank you, Ashley. Mover and seconder for the bylaws, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Doucette. Are there any questions or comments to the bylaws? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Madam Clerk, the confirmatory bylaw, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the following bylaw be read three times and finally passed. Bylaw 59778313, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of June 24th, 2013.
Thank you, Ashley. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Elliott, Councillor Danch. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Councillor Kenny, you have to stop giving me that look. I deserve it. Ooh.
She looks over those glasses.
Yeah, when you see those glasses drop to the end of her nose and she gives you that look, you know you're in trouble. Now, our next upcoming meetings, folks, we do have some meetings upcoming. We have July 3rd, which is going to be a business planning session dealing with electoral matters, that being the size of council, as well as whether we go at large or we have wards. So by all means, it being a public meeting, I do encourage not only obviously council to come here and show up. On July 3rd?
That was the July 8th meeting.
That was the July 8th meeting. Stop that. But having said that, I want to get to that in a second. So July 3rd, we will have electoral matters, and by all means, those folks from the public, you're more than welcome to come on out and participate. July 8th, what we were thinking is possibly proceeding with the meeting for water, wastewater, and with that, having a second meeting, because I think Mr. Hanson preferred to have two meetings on that. One with us as council, and having the report presented to us by staff, having the discussion, and then following that, having the region and a consultant coming on out and making delegation, as well as if council had any questions, we would then proceed to ask those questions in that evening. So we're not sure, so we're going to stick with the July 3rd meeting right now, but we'll let you know about July 8th meeting.
What time is July 3rd? Because we don't have it on our calendar.
July 3rd, Madam Clerk?
Not yet, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock in the evening is what we're looking at? Okay. Now, following that, we do have a Committee of the Whole and Council meeting on July 22nd. Once again, Committee of the Whole Council here in the Chamber at 6:30 p.m. Okay. We still have the transit issue that we're going to discuss. That has a bit more time attached to it. But again, as I said earlier during the Regional Council's report, very critical that we get these items brought back to the region with your input attached to it. So with that, and Councillor Kenny, if we have a meeting on July 8th, that'll be 2 days after your birthday.
It will be.
And I know that.
I will not be here.
And you won't be here. Is that having anything to do with it? So with that, we will now allow council to go and watch the hockey game. It's 8:40. Then I'm sure you guys are just all chomping at the bit to go watch the game. So I'll be entertaining a motion to adjourn. Councillor Elliott with a big grin on his face. And Councillor Doucette, are there any questions or comments? A recorded vote? No? Members of council, all those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. To all of you, have a great week, and to those watching on COGECO, have a wonderful week.